Go big or go home. NASCAR heads back to Daytona. We give you our DFS tiers and best bets for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 tonight on the Backroad.
It's a non-points race, but it is a short race. Checkered flag. That's all this race
All right, welcome down the back road in between media's NASCAR betting and DFS program. No Elliott Hicks, no Rod Villagomez on the program tonight. However, you have me, Seth Woolcock, and tonight I am joined by a man who does a little bit of everything. He does a little fantasy football, does a little NASCAR. He is Brian Twining from the Bet Spurts people over there. Brian, how are you doing tonight, man? First time having you on the program. Appreciate you being here. How are vibes as we head towards what's going to be a fun one out in Daytona?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for having me on, Seth. I thoroughly enjoy your show every week. It's one of the few NASCAR shows or even any sort of content that I consume on a weekly basis with my extremely busy schedule. But as we head here to Daytona, unlike a lot of people in the betting community, especially for NASCAR, I actually look forward to these races because I love throwing darts. I love trying to get some positive CLV on bets. Like, I'm always looking for that long shot winner, which you'll see as we talk about the bets later. Like, I have plenty of plays to get into.
It's one of those that while we always do encourage, smart betting and not getting too overexcited with it, because there are times, like, whatever money you put towards this race, it's one, Brian, like, sometimes statistics go out the window. All the analysis we do, it sometimes does not pay off just because of the unpredictability of these super speedways. This Daytona night race, the last couple of years, has been nothing shy of that, with some rain in there, some delays going in the next day. So we're going to break that down tonight. We're going to do some DFS tiers, and then later on, we're going to do our best bets. But first, we are going to look back in the rear view, talk a little bit about Watkins Glen and how one of the final road course of the season went for us. All right, all the road course fun that we had earlier in the season hasn't been as fun lately, I would say, Brian. Willie B, he gets the win back in the winner's circle on a day when I don't know if he really was the fastest car. Michael McDowell got off to an early lead, dominant early, but just a troublesome day for him. Some pit road penalties, ultimately burns up the car and the engine goes. And then Chase Elliott, everyone's darling, betting him 3.5, 4-1 last week. He causes one of the only cautions of the day, runs out of gas on the reserve. Some miscommunication there in the number 9 team. Brian, reactions as a fan, as a bettor to what we saw up at the Glen in New York last weekend?
Yeah, so first of all, I really like how you said that although William Byron essentially ran away with the race, you don't think that he was maybe the best driver. And I think from my perspective early on, I thought Michael McDowell was going to come out here and just throttle the again. As I was tweeting with my podcast partner over at Angle of Pursuit, Kyle, early on, like, Michael McDowell is fast and he looks like he's going to win this race. And then it just goes about that he has the complete polar opposite weekend that he had the week before. He has multiple issues on pit road. Car just breaks down on him. And then, Chase Elliott and Alan Gustafson, how do they mistakenly think they have extra fuel when you cannot afford to make that mistake when you're in his position trying to garner as many points as you can heading into this Daytona race? And they should have played it safe. Even if they said they had 3 laps of reserve fuel, come in after the second. Don't try to take it the entire 3, because they've now put themselves in win or get it or go home mode at the most unpredictable race that we're going to have all season.
Yeah, it is going to be an electric time here this weekend. As far as the betting cards were, though, at Watkins Glen, not so great for us at the back road here. We are heavy on McDowell. I was so heavy on McDowell. I was hoping for a great day. And like you said, early in the race, I thought he was going to win it.
Yep.
And the 12-1 outright falls flat. We also were taking that boost, the top 5 for Chase and McDowell over there on Caesars as well. I laid the absolute piss out of the fucking Logano Harvick matchup. And that one was like the one thing that came true, fading Kevin Harvick on road courses. We can
Oh, he's
continue to do it.
atrocious.
He's so bad. And
Yeah.
I went too hard on Logano, though. I was on the 50-1 outright. I thought it was a little bit of a misprice on him top 5, but I didn't take him top 10 where he really was. So I think I was a little bit greedy there. Any thoughts on William Byron and just kind of the victory for him? He was out there. I saw people earlier in the week getting 30, 40 plus on him. 20-1 is where we mentioned him on the back road. I didn't get down on that, but I did say, I don't know the last time I've seen William Byron 20-1 in a race. And I don't know if we'll ever see him again that high of odds, Brian.
Yeah, so on the William Byron thing, like I'm suffering from massive regret because if you're not familiar with my podcast over at Angle of Pursuit, like we had talked earlier in the week and we had discussed his 22-1 number, and then I actually went to Vegas last weekend and I grabbed him 22-1 as soon as I got there, but then I had an opportunity to get him at 30-1 the morning of practice and qualifying, but being the good husband that I am, I had to pass that up to be on time to pick my wife up from the airport. So I wasn't able to bet that. And needless to say, as William Byron was running away with this late in the race, I was just sitting there thinking about all of the cash that I could have been sleeping on my way home. So yeah, look, Byron is the type of guy that we've said it over on our show, and I know a lot of people have talked about him over the season. He seems to come into every single race, every single week undervalued from what he's done on a week to week basis. Like books are still valuing Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, even over him on a weekly basis, when Byron has been the most consistent guy with the most speed, the best pit crew all season long. And like, it's kind of funny that none of us were that quick to act on such a long number on him.
I know. And I've been on the wrong side of Byron all season long. I've been on him at the races. He somehow has an issue and then have missed all the good times. So I'm a little sour on Byron, but maybe I can get back on him later in the season. Brian, how about we look ahead, though, to what's going to be a more unpredictable race than Watkins Glen was. So let's get to it in the Horizon forecast.
Hey, Michael, it was only 20% chance of rain. I think we got all 20.
All right, Cup Series heading back to Daytona this weekend, 160 laps, 400 miles. We have stage breaks, kind of what we usually see at these super speedways, lap 35, lap 96, and we're going to that 160 mark. We do some Friday night qualifying, no practice though, Brian, and then race is going to be on Saturday at 7. 6 active drivers have won here for the first time. Is there anything you're looking at when you hear that? Are alarm bells going off? Because I thought that was a pretty big number. When I look at that statistic almost every single week, and that's one that kind of popped off. Another one that I thought on these trends was 5 of the last 8 races. The winners come from 17th or worse on the grid. That's courtesy of iFantasy Race over there. That was another one that kind of perked me up as well. Are there any other trends that you were bringing to the table? Anything else that you kind of crept up in the back of your mind, or any of these trends that you think is worth noting?
Well, so I did a little bit of research into this. I just went back a couple of years. I didn't want to get too far back here, but 5 of the last 7 races at Daytona as a whole have gone past the scheduled number of laps. So, I mean,
Wow.
We're probably getting OT here. And then since becoming a cutoff race in 2020, stage 3 has seen 3 or more wrecks in all 3 of these fall races. So you add in the anxiety of guys trying to get into the playoffs. Guys are getting a little more aggressive late in the race. Pushing is probably getting a little bit harder for teammates, pushing guys that need to get a better finish or to win the race. And so you can probably bank on this race getting a little wacky and getting a little crazy late in the day.
And I think maybe that's why I almost prefer it to the 500 is one, it's at night, it's on a Saturday night, you're
Yeah.
probably getting boozed up a little more for it, having a good time. But at the same time as well, like there is that anxiety. And last year we saw it with Austin Dillon. We've seen it in the past as well. So I love that this race is right on the cutoff now. And looking at some of these statistics, it's showing that unpredictability. I don't think we can say that word anymore. It's a buzzword tonight. I looked at some of the advanced metrics when looking at the overall data for drivers. I was looking into the 500 specifically. I was also taking some driver history from previous Daytona races and then looking at these super speedways, advanced metrics as well. The one controversial thing I think I did, and I don't know if everyone was doing this, but I also looked at a little bit of these larger tracks we've been to as well, 2+ miles, Pocono, Michigan, Auto Club just a little bit. I know that's the tire wear is a lot different at Auto Club, but did you factor in that at all? Is that something you considered? Because like I felt like there was a trend from the guys who perform at the super speedways also kind of perform at these larger speedways in general.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is something to be said about guys that perform well at, say, a Daytona and how it correlates to a Michigan or a Pocono. Now, it's interesting that most of the time you would sit there and say Daytona and Talladega, but like the racing is quite different at those two tracks because Talladega is a lot wider. So we get an extra groove there. So it's a little bit easier to, have trains of cars pass and create another line. Whereas Daytona and then even Atlanta, which is termed mini Daytona, like it's a 2-groove track. And even for Atlanta, like one thing that I kind of did was I haven't really looked too much into the way the Atlanta track has raced in the next gen, just because you haven't seen the same type of like drafting that we see at Daytona with lines kind of, changing, and you have the high groove getting a run and jumping out way out in front of the low groove. It just kind of, to me, it's a different race because it's a lot more compact and stuff happens a lot faster. And so I kind of looked at Daytona as its own animal for this week, especially
I know a lot of people did that. Yes.
Yeah, because it is the cutoff race for the regular season. I think a lot of the stuff, a lot of the metrics are kind of, I think it's good to start as like your base for what you're looking at. But I mean, when you have guys literally racing for their livelihoods in this race to advance to possibly win a cup championship, like you can throw all that out the window and expect craziness to happen.
Yeah, 100%. We got Wendy in the chat tonight. Good to see you, Wendy. Saw you out in Canton, Ohio a couple weeks ago. So good to see you tonight tuning into the show. We appreciate you. Brian, let's go ahead, break it down a little bit further. Let's get driver specific here in tire tiers. All right, Brian, we are locked and loaded with some tire tiers. We're going to rank these for DFS purposes. We're using some salaries over at DraftKings. We're also pulling a little bit from our partners over at FanTrax as well. Brian, where do you want to go here with the driver A? Who is someone, again, it's going to be volatile. So do you want to pay up this week? Are you finding values on the board? Looking at salaries, who do you like for the 101 here?
Yeah, Daytona is a tricky animal. I mean, when you look at even the 500, I think it was something like 7 of the top 8 scorers all started the race outside like the top 20 or something. So starting position is basically key when you do DFS at a Daytona track. But if we're looking at just pure racing ability here and somebody who's probably going to be up front most of the day, I'm going to go a little off the rails and start with the number 2 Austin Cindric car.
Whoa.
Yeah. Look, I've been down on Cindric all season, but at super speedways since joining the Cup Series, Cindric has been one of the most underappreciated guys. Like his first win came at the Daytona 500. He placed 3rd in this race last season. He has a low finish of 23rd over his 4 Cup Series Daytona races. He's led 5 or more laps with 12th or better finishes at the last 3 Atlanta races. Like, he is really good at super speedways. And I think I heard this mentioned on the NASCAR betting preview show on Wednesday. when you look at his garage, the Penske guys, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, who we'll probably see close to this top 2 tiers,
Yeah.
are extremely good at super speedways. They're already fully locked into the playoffs. They're going to do everything possible to get this guy into the playoffs, which means a possible win, which is why I'm going to start him in the top tier.
Wow. That is the hottest take I have heard on this entire show. I mean, last time we even had Cindric in the B tiers maybe was the 500. And since then, like, we haven't even had it in ranks. Wow. All right.
Oh, he's been like absent all season.
But I get the call, man. I was riding the outright on Cindric at this race last year. We also did another draft with the NASCAR betting preview show guys, and I had another 500 on the line with Cindric as well. So yeah, I have some grudges at this track, and if he pulls it off this year and didn't last year, we'll have to talk about it. Guy's a tall motherfucker too. Holy hell, he's a tall guy compared to these rest of these ones. We got Didi in the chat. What's up, Didi? Thanks for tuning in tonight. All right. I think there's no one else I can go with than the hottest driver or the hottest team, honestly. And I think it's Brad Keselowski. And I'll throw Chris Buescher right up there with him, man. Like, you look at all the advanced metrics from the 500, they point me right to RFK. RFK has been catching fire. Like, you know, when you put a Hot Pocket in the microwave and you just get it out, and it's like,
oh yeah,
it's too hot to even eat. That's why I don't like Hot Pockets, because I fucking burn myself all the time. But like, that's RFK right now. Like, that's how hot these guys have been. Brad, this is his time, man. Like, he was so electric in Daytona, first by mid-race, started 10th in that one. He ran 81% of his laps in the top 15. That's the 4th most. And the second in driver rating as well, only to Chris Buescher. So I think these guys are at the peak right now. Could I see Chris Buescher rolling out his 3rd win? I think like the tides are in his favor, so he has to be at least mentioned up here as well. Like, Brad's kind of been snake bit. Can he get over that? That's the question mark this weekend, but he's been electric at all these super speedways, Brian.
Yeah, no, I love that. And if there's one thing that everyone should know about me, it's that Brad Keselowski is probably my least favorite driver to bet or play DFS, because every week that I am on him, he wrecks or just absolutely ruins my card.
Yes.
So it's really, really few and far between that you see me supporting him. But I think in the same breath as Austin Cindric, I think Keselowski is going to be pushed by Buescher. And we saw what they did at the 500, like you said, where they were essentially leading the race the entire day and controlling the field. And I think we see that again.
All right. We got Lost Profit in the chat tonight. What's up, dude? Thanks for joining us tonight on your Thursday. Hope you're enjoying a Busch Light with Brian and I. All right, Brian, back to you here. Who are some other drivers that to you belong in this A tier?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to go a couple of Toyota guys here, and they're the, of course, probably everyone knows about these, but Denny Hamlin, he's known as probably the best driver at Daytona. And then the guy that he literally talked about on his show, he's going to be pushing him to try to get him into the playoffs or a win. And that's the 23 of Bubba Wallace. Both Bubba, look, finishing results aside, although Bubba, I think, has a low finish, he only has one finish worse than like 21st at Daytona. So, like in his 12 career Cup Series races here, he's always at the front at the end when it matters. And when you look at anybody in the same type of situation as Cindric and Keselowski, like, Wallace needs a win. So he's going to do everything possible to stay up front to make sure he clinches a spot, because he cannot risk having Chase Elliott come up from behind and take the win right from underneath him late in the race. So I think Bubba is going to be there all day. And then Denny's history at this track speaks for itself.
100%. I'm going to go with another Toyota here. I'm really high on Fords this weekend, but I do like a couple Toyotas. Martin Truex Jr. I feel like anytime you can get a guy who's averaging over 50 DraftKings points per week, you have to go with it at 8,700. And Martin Truex actually been a lot better here than we think. I'll break down a little more advanced metrics in the next betting segment, but I like the number 19 car. Brian, is there anyone else that belongs in A tier? Do you want to start the Bs here?
I mean, there's so many good drivers. But yeah, no, I think we'll start the B tiers, and I'm gonna add Logano and Blaney. I think they have to go together.
Yep, I agree.
They're both really good, but Blaney doesn't have the aggressiveness necessary to win these races. It doesn't look like. I mean, the fact that Austin Cindric stole the win from him in 2022 says it all. And then Logano, like, he almost lucks his way into these positions, as we saw with like the 500. He wasn't the best car. He just found himself up front late in that race, and he's always kind of in the right position, which he does every single week.
Yeah, I love both of those drivers. You have to mix at least one or two Penske drivers in this weekend. I mean, you're high on the whole collective, it seems like, this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm gonna break the Ford train a little bit. I think William Byron deserves just to be in here just because what he's done. He's taken home some of these super speedways this season as well. I'm gonna throw Michael McDowell in there as well, another Ford. And McDowell is someone who, look, man, I mean, even when he was driving start and park cars a couple of years ago in the Cup Series, he was still very, very good at super speedways. I almost kind of find that as his niche along with the road course success. But 25% top 10 rate here at Daytona, driver rating of 80.4. By mid-race in the 500, he was up there in fourth, had some issues, didn't get the finish he deserved, but Michael McDowell is going to be up there. And if you're looking for a leverage play, 7,800, man, like you can kind of dip down. I don't think I think there are people like you and I, Brian, who know Michael McDowell is good and at 7,800.
Yes.
So it might not be the best leverage play in the world, but I think you'll still get a little bit of non-chalk on that.
Yeah, no, I've always been a McDowell backer here, and actually back when he won the Daytona 500, he was my most bet driver that weekend because I think he was something like 40-1, and then his top 10 number was like 4-1. So yeah, I was definitely partying with Mr. McDowell there that weekend. I'm gonna go another one off the wall here. Like, I know I'm passing up a bunch of really good drivers, but I love Corey LaJoie at drafting tracks. Look, he's extremely aggressive, and most often than not, he wrecks out. But if there's anybody willing to do what's necessary to finish high in these races, it's him. And also looking at what he's not able to do in qualifying, you're probably going to get decent placement points if he does put this thing inside the top 10, because his car's not really fast by itself. He's just really good in the draft. So I look at him as somebody who's 6,200 on DraftKings. If he's starting mid-20s, which is probably likely, you have a decent opportunity to get 30, 40 points out of a guy who is extremely cheap.
Corey LaJoie is always our little huckleberry over here at IVT. We love us some Corey LaJoie. He's been better at Atlanta and Talladega a little bit than Daytona. I don't know what that is. I think it's just the DNFs that hurt him here. But he's going to be ripping. Exactly. I have a matchup that I'm actually fading him in, and I'm a little bit worried because I never want to fade my guy LaJoie. So love to hear the number 7 called out there. I think just out of respect, we might as well go 7, 8, 9 here. And I think Kyle Busch, he's going to find a way. Like, even last year, I think he got caught up in something early and wasn't very fast, but then he missed that whole cyclone that came through and took out half the field. Yeah. And Kyle Busch finds a way to be at the end of this. I don't expect him to be a top 5 car. I expect him more somewhere in that 10 to 15 range, but Kyle Busch will probably be lurking. And Chase, to me, I don't really want to pay the 10-5 for him. So I will not be paying for him in DraftKings. He's more approachable on Fantrack still, has kind of a lower salary over there. I wouldn't mind him. It's more the storyline here. His Hendrick teammates know they kind of have to push him and Bowman, but I just think they're kind of snake bitten now, and I don't want any part of it. Can you make the case for the number 9 car?
I mean, I think he has something like 4 top 10s in the last 7 trips to Daytona. He's good here. And, if you do correlate Atlanta to Daytona, like, there's really nobody better at Atlanta than Chase Elliott, even in the new, new setup. And because it is the cutoff race, like I've been saying this all week, you really have to factor in the guys who need it more than others and the teammates that he has pushing him. And like, if you have William Byron in the same group as him, they're going to do everything possible to get Byron behind Elliott to push him further up into the field. Or, even Kyle Larson, who he'll fall somewhere in here. I mean, he's not good at super speedways, but he looked okay at the 500. And like that car has speed. So they'll probably forfeit their finishing result to get the 9 into a better spot.
Yeah. All right. Well, you laid the case for him, Brian. You laid the case. Can you buck up now? That's the question. Can you pay the
I'm in
10-5?
full chase mode.
Okay. We got Mark Harris over there on the betting preview show. He's shaving the number 9 into his back this weekend. So look for that on TV. We'll see if we can catch that. All right. I'm gonna go with a guy who we had the pleasure of talking with after Pocono. And it seems like this is one of those tracks the number 43 team has circled. Like since Michigan, I bet all he's been doing is in the sim doing Daytona because he knew he wasn't going to be a threat. He doesn't have the speed to compete at the Glen, at Indy.
Yeah.
And now he comes here. He comes back to Daytona where he had the number 2 car in total speed rankings, courtesy of iFantasy Race, in that 500 earlier this season, 10th in green flag speed, and he's 5th by mid-race. I like Eric Jones a lot this week. I'm going to be betting on him. I'm going to be playing him DFS heavy at 6,700. I think everyone else and their mother knows Eric Jones is going to be here, so it's going to be chalky as hell. You know what I mean? It's going to be chalky as hell, but I'm going to ride the chalk at 6,700 9 times out of 10 in my lineups this weekend.
Yeah, Eric Jones is somebody I gravitate to every single time we hit a drafting track. The same way it's Corey LaJoie, and that Jones is somebody that I've bet on numerous occasions at these races, and just something inevitably happens, which is probably what's going to wind up happening here. But yeah, I really like him. I think he's probably closer to the B group than he would be like to the D group, obviously. So he's like C plus. But moving on from him, the next guy, like, how do you not add the Daytona 500 winner at a super speedway? And that's Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now,
Yes,
can he win back-to-back Daytona races in a season? It's highly doubtful, but he's always been somebody that everybody loves at these tracks. He showed it at the Daytona 500. He's run up front on numerous occasions at these tracks, but just like Alfred said here in the chat, like, can they avoid the trouble? Like Jones, LaJoie, Stenhouse, all of these guys, they always seem to find contact and either create or are part of the big one at some point during the race.
Yeah, I love the number 47. I also think I like the number 54 car, Ty Gibbs. He's another one that the Joe Gibbs teammates could be pushing to the end.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, man, like Ty Gibbs actually kind of sneaky good here. Really good in the total speed rankings. Comes in number 7 overall. Didn't get the finish this season. But Ty Gibbs, I mean, he's a wheelman. He can really kind of drive every single track out there. Can he avoid the big one? That's what he kind of hasn't been able to do at some of these super speedways so far this season. But I like the number 54. He's at the right price this week as well. The price continues to get higher and higher on him all season. Now we're back down at 7,200. So I'll take a piece of Ty Gibbs. Anyone else you're interested in the C tier here, Brian?
Oh yeah, definitely. The number 3, Austin Dillon, $7,500 at DK. He won this race last year simply by making it through the chaos and just avoiding being part of the numerous big ones. But then we saw at the 500 when him and Kyle Busch teamed up together, they were able to move up through the field, and it looked like one of them was going to win or Dillon was going to push Kyle Busch to the victory. And now we're in a situation where Busch is easily inside the playoff line, where Dillon is, in that same category of guys who needs a really good finish, needs a victory here, and somebody who's already won at Daytona before. He's always somebody that is a threat to top 10 at these tracks. I think he's somebody to keep an eye on for a decent salary savings if you're looking towards the middle.
Okay. Yeah. Austin Dillon, someone I had circled in my lineups as well. Have him out there in a couple already. I know it's controversial. I know no one else wants to play him this week, but I got to show my loyalty to Ross Chastain, the number 1 car this weekend. And I get it. And I think that's the reaction but by everyone though, 8,300. So you are paying a little more. I would like to see that price closer to 7,500, 7,800 range, but no one is going to play Ross Chastain. So if he happens to hit this week, I think he'll be fine. He has 2 top 10s in his last 6 races here at Daytona as well. It could be worse for him. He's going to like, I don't think he has as much on the line as some of these other guys. So I don't know if he'll be as aggressive. So I kind of like less aggressive Ross here at Daytona. And he's won on a super speedway before as well at Talladega. So Give me a little bit of Ross here. Anyone else you like in the C's? Because I think I might have maybe one more, but if that, it's getting tough out here.
I mean, maybe just based on where I think he's going to qualify, because this is kind of the back end of the season, just like middling of this pack. I'm going to add the number 10, Eric Almirola. In terms of qualifying this year at drafting tracks and all the high-speed tracks, Eric Almirola has put it inside the top 5 in every single one. Both Atlanta races, at Talladega, and at the Daytona 500. So he's probably going to have speed coming into the weekend. And he's another guy who needs a win. So, I mean, he's probably going to want to stay up front. He's not going to want to drop back into the pack and put himself at risk to being taken out with the big one. And his SHR teammates, if they see that he's running up front, will do whatever's necessary to get him to a victory. So I like Almirola as somebody who could potentially pop this week. I'm not banking on him not avoiding the wreckage, but 6,900, I think he's a good middle tier guy.
He's won here before too. His first career win came at Daytona at one point as well. Should have came earlier in a 500 a few years before that as well. I'm going to go Chris Bell. He's been really good on the super speedways this season, top 10 in all of them. So yeah, I'm all right with him. I have been fading him. He's been a big matchup fade for me the last month or two. But at the end of the day, I don't know. It's Toyota equipment, and I think it's going to be up there. I would like to recommend AJ Allmendinger for this tier as well. 6,300. I think he's another value. What is the streak right now? 6 straight top 10s at Daytona, I think, in the Cup Series for AJ Allmendinger. He's another one of those guys who just kind of finds his way through chaos. And at 6,300, I don't know how chalky he's going to be. I don't know if I think LaJoie's right in that range. He's probably chalkier. Haley's won this race before, so I think he'll be more chalkier in that range. So I'm fine with throwing out AJ. He's got a win here as well.
Yeah, no, I love Dinger, especially in the placement market this week of betting, as we get into that a little bit later. But yeah, Dinger is somebody who at the 500, I had a lot of dough on Dinger to top 10 there, and threw a little shekels on him on an outright back then. But yeah, no, I love that call.
All right, Ryan, who else belongs in this C tier, or do you want to drop to D's? There are some huge name guys we haven't talked about. The number 4 car, the number 5 car, the number 45 car, 48. There are some great drivers, but ones do we really want to get invested with for DFS purposes is the question.
Yeah, so okay, so Alex Bowman, he's somebody who I like this week. But from a Daytona standpoint, he's not the greatest. He's okay. He has a couple of top 10s over the last couple of years, but he's not somebody that you normally consider to be good here. And I think he's in that D plus range, C minus more so. Mm-hmm. So we could start off the D group with the 48.
Okay, fair enough. I think we should throw the 4 car right in there with him. Anytime you can get some Kevin Harvick at 7,000, it's appealing. It's a guy averaging just over 35 DraftKings points per contest this season. So Kevin Harvick, I'm not expecting him to run that great. He hasn't at super speedways this season, but he is in a Ford, and I am high on Fords this week. So I'll get some number 4 car in there. Man, it's getting tough down here. It's getting tough. Anyone else belong in this tier for you? Because I almost feel like we almost kind of went through another mini tier. I didn't mind the 4 and the 48 in there. We have some big names here, but are they worth it?
All right, just for fun, because he's done it. The number 78, BJ McLeod. Look, he was the cover athlete of the show. He has top 10 in each of the last 2 fall Daytona races. He is always somebody who's going to run at the back of the pack. And when you're at a race where most of the carnage is happening near the front or in the top half of the field, if he can navigate his way through that the majority of the day, you're probably looking at a low 20s, low teens finish for somebody who's in the $4,700 on DraftKings.
Survive and fucking advance, man. BJ McLeod, Live Fast Racing. Yeah,
I love McLeod.
I'm so happy you threw him out there because I was going to do the same if he didn't. I got a little story about BJ McLeod's team, and I'll tell that later in the betting segment because I might have a BJ bet for us. Might have a BJ bet tonight.
Ooh.
Kyle Larson, we kind of just have to throw him in this tier. I'm not paying $9,200 for a guy who seems to be snake bitten at these tracks, but he is in Hendrick's equipment, so we're going to honor that. I'm fading Tyler Reddick this week. When there are high variables at racetracks, Tyler Reddick does not perform well. And I do not want to get invested with someone in that asset at all. So I will pass at him at 8,000. Like I would take Bowman at 78 over him, or 76, McDowell 78, Dylan like Cindric, Ty. Like there's no way I'm playing Tyler Reddick here. I could even maybe throw him in the Fs. Can you talk me out of that?
Yeah, no, I think Reddick is definitely teetering between the D and the F group because there is no motivation to win here for him. There is no goal other than trying to get Bubba Wallace into the playoffs for this 23-11 team, and say Chase Elliott and Ty Gibbs take each other out early in the race. Like they're not going to be pressing to do much from the 45 team. Like they're already secure in their plans. They'll probably punt the rest of the day and start looking forward to Darlington for the beginning of the playoffs. Yeah, I don't see them really doing much here. And he's not really somebody that I trust at tracks like this, just knowing that all of the variables for them have amounted to mistakes being made, whether it's driver mistake, pit road mistake, or, just them not being good or having the wrong setup.
100%. I'm going to throw a couple more in this tier just out of respect. Justin Haley, he has won this race. It was different circumstances at that time, but Justin Haley, I like colleague in general. He needs to get in the playoffs. He's on a revenge tour a little bit. So I like Justin Haley there. And then honestly, man, I think I have to do it, but can we get some Riley Herbst love up in here? Like he is 36 car this week, I believe, right? Correct.
Yeah.
We're in the 36. No Zane Smith. It will be Herbst piloting that. And he was 10th in the 500, 20th in his other Cup Series start. I believe it was at Atlanta. So I like Riley. This week, man. At the price you're paying for him, 5,300 on DraftKings. Like he's the minimum $5 foot long over there on Fan Tracks. I'm in on the number 36 car. I'll have him in lines for sure.
Yeah, and also remember too, Herbst, when he was driving the 15 earlier this year, he actually spun early in that race in the 500.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, so he came back from having an incident and still wound up having a decent day.
There we go. Overcoming adversity. That's what we like over here at IBT Media. Brian, anyone else in the D's, or should we start the F's?
All right, I'm going to do it. It's extremely gross. He's been absolutely terrible all season, and this is coming from a guy who picked him as a dark horse to make the championship for. That's the 14 Chase Briscoe in this D group. Yeah, I'm going to do it. There's just something about his potential at tracks like this. Like he finished third at the 500 in 2022. He has really good finishes at Talladega recently. I know I let off the show by talking about I don't see that much correlation between the two racing styles, but in terms of just drafting, I think there's something that he's able to find at these type of tracks recently. And it's literally balls to the wall this weekend. There's nothing to lose. And if somebody's going to take advantage of literally throwing everything in, it could be a Briscoe.
Absolutely. I missed this comment earlier. Apologize, Alfred, but he says the price on Larson way too short for the Daytona 500, but I like him at 22 to 1. Yeah, I think if you want to get invested with Larson, it's probably best to do it in that variety rather than here in DFS. I'm going to throw Daniel Suarez up there as well. 7th in the 500. He's had some success on these tracks. We haven't seen the speed out of Trackhouse. I'd like to see more of that down the stretch here. But I mean, he's right on the bubble too, man. He's got a lot of motivation. I think. Hell, I'll put him in I'm bringing Reddick back. I like all these other guys better than Reddick. So we're bringing Reddick back. We're putting Suarez up. Let's drop down to the Fs here, Brian. Anyone else you can make a case for? We're down to the shit box tier.
All right. So this is a toss-up for me, but I'm going to go with the guy who's been in the Cup Series a couple of years, and I'm going to start the F group off with Ryan Preece.
Yep.
Back when he first emerged in the Cup Series, he was actually good here at Daytona, and he was somebody that I was always attracted to at these drafting tracks. I think he had a couple top 10s in his first couple of years at super speedways. And yeah, SHRs kind of look like crap. They've looked bad this season, but if anybody's going to surprise, I think it's Preece. And at 6,400, I think he can do something with that cost. And the fact that you're high on Ford, a lot of people seem to be high on Ford this week. I think he's somebody to keep an eye on that may not garner as much roster percentage because he hasn't been good of late during the season.
I will also add the number 42 car right after him, Josh Berry. He's me piloting this one. No Noah Gragson moving forward as well. No Mike Rockenfeller this week either. So Berry's back in there. Like, this is more just a sign of respect. Josh Berry's a really good driver. We have no advanced metrics on him at Daytona in a cup car. But Josh Berry's a wheelman. So I'm going to put him there. Todd Gilliland's been really, really solid as well. I feel like on these super speedways this season, doesn't get enough respect. And actually, if you look at the speed rankings, Todd Gilliland, I'll have to find those, but Todd Gilliland did really, really well in the speed rankings as well, 5th overall. So I like Todd Gilliland a little bit here too. Any final thoughts on any of these other guys before I kind of rattle them off here? Anyone that deserves to be ranked for you, Brian?
I think Austin Hill is somebody to consider. I mean, he's incredible in the Xfinity series at super speedways. I know he's in crap equipment, but you know, he seems to know how to navigate these type of races. And then if he was in better stuff, I think Ty Dillon is somebody who has traditionally popped at these tracks and is always somebody to target in the top 10 market as a long shot.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you Austin Hill on the board. I'm not happy about it. I said it once, I'll say it again. This fucking Beard Motorsports team is a money laundering scheme. I don't know what they're doing here. They're out of their class, man. So I will not be playing Austin Hill. Hopefully Brian does, and hopefully he gets 37th again like he has the last 2 times he's ran a cup race.
I just think it's interesting because I'm pretty sure, wasn't it Gragson who ran the 62 in 2022 to a top 10?
Yes,
right?
you are right. You are right. That was their one shining moment.
And I would say, from what I've seen, Austin Hill is the more consistent super speedway guy in the Xfinity series.
Yes.
In the Xfinity series.
Yeah.
So
fair. I just how the equipment has looked this year, man. Like, it does not look like a professional organization. So that's I'd love to find some Austin Hill fade matchups. That was one of my favorite things to do the last time we went at Atlanta. I will throw the number 51, JJ Yaley, up there. Probably is the final driver that we're going to rank tonight. And listen, man, JJ Yaley, say what you want about JJ Yaley, man. Dude's still actually kind of properly jacked. I'll be honest. I saw him on the grid earlier this year. Like, dude is kind of fucking jacked. And you don't think of that because, like, JJ Yaley was, like, the hot thing in, 2007, 2008? Like, it's been a minute. 5,100.
Well, former F1 champion, so.
Yeah. 5,100 for a guy who's averaging 24 points per game. I can get down with some JJ Yaley. I am going to leave unranked, though. Chandler Smith, 5,400. I mean, he did have a great, I don't know. What do you think, Brian? He had a great run as far as DFS is concerned in the 500. Can he do it? Can he do it here again?
I mean, if you're going to get crazy, like, I think this race presents more opportunities than the 500 did because of what we talked about with the playoff picture happening. Like, you're going to see more aggressive moves by guys up front or in the middle of the pack, which does open up the opportunity for the back markers as long as they can avoid it, because they're the ones that got to drive through it. And, I think as long as they can stay on the lead lap, which isn't a guarantee by these guys, there's a possibility, but it's just hard to get to these guys at the back that are jumping into a cup car after running Xfinity all season, because it is quite different.
Yeah, 100%. Let's leave him unranked then. Number 15 car. No one's playing Brennan Poole. If you want to play someone down that low, go BJ. Go number 51 car. Like, there are other guys to play in that range. The 21 car. Listen, I've been the Harrison Burton stan about the last month or two. Like, I have bet on Harrison Burton. I've had him in a lot of DFS lineups, and a lot of times he comes through. But at super speedways, this is a guy. He gets fucking squirrely. He gets fucking squirrely when he gets out in front. Like, I feel that way about a couple. Bubba is the same way sometimes. He get a little squirrely out in front, but no one does it better. The squirreliness and right into the wall than Harrison Burton, man. I will play him sometime later this year. This is not the race, Brian.
I've been burned on numerous occasions by Harrison Burton at super speedway tracks specifically. So he is somebody that is a complete avoid by me.
He is great at the longer track. He's great at Pocono. He's great at Michigan. He's great at Auto Club, like those longer speedways. But once you get into these high speeds, man,
I was
and the
just going to say it's the close contact racing where he struggles, because at
yes,
Pocono and Michigan, a lot of that gets strung out. So he doesn't have two guys. He's not going 3 wide and is in the middle of 3 wide to where he can't handle the vehicle. So yeah.
all right. Well, that does it for our tire tiers. Let's go ahead. Let's shift gears over into the betting perspective and talk a little parking garage props. All right, parking garage props. Brian, the way we start this out every week is like we like to talk a little shit about the books. We like to talk about, and if there's ever a week to talk some shit, it's this week. First of all, I think it's probably just the nature of the beast. Football season's coming. We're getting odds later and later in the week. We already have Barstool that kind of has been shitting the bed. We know what's happening there with ESPN Bet. And now Caesars comes out with some of the most ridiculous lines I've ever seen at super speedways, like half the field in minus money for a top 10.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. This is what I went through this week, folks. This is what I went through. So I was searching. I was searching for a new sports book. I'm tired of what I'm getting at Caesars. I'm tired of what I'm getting at Barstool. I'm going searching. I find Bet Rivers. Everything at Bet Rivers is just screaming my name. I need my social card. I need proof of address. Like if you want to get invested with Bet Rivers, great odds this week. Like there's some of the best odds across the board. Make sure you have your documentation. I had to go swimming for it. I found it. I was able to get down on this before the show, but there are way better odds I missed out on earlier in the week. So have the verification process figured out over there at fucking Bet Rivers. You don't need to steal my whole identity just to play some bets. So with that being said, Brian, after that little rant there, your thoughts on the books overall this week and the offerings?
Well, I can start by saying the fact that you even have books available to you is way better than the crap that I deal with being a native Californian.
Yes.
Where we don't have legal sports betting. So I have to go through the back channels, offshores, all that kind of business. Like I make frequent trips to Las Vegas for race weekends. That being said, I still do line shop for every single race. And yeah, Bet Rivers, for what it's worth, they seem to have the best placement odds and matchups every single week. Now, the outright board is always kind of wishy-washy depending on what book you're going to and, what kind of handle they're taking in on certain drivers. But from placements and props and stuff, Bet Rivers is incredible. Now, looking at Daytona, you kind of expected we were going to get shit top 10 numbers when the majority of the books haven't even been posting top 10 bets all season. DraftKings finally posts top 10s last week for the first time in like 3 months. Like, where the hell did that come from? And then Caesars this week, who is normally the go-to, like you said, they have like 60% of the field with negative odds to top 10, which I understand it's a super speedway race, but how are you giving guys like Ryan Preece less than 2-1 to top 10? Like, dude has one top 10 in 2023, I believe. I don't care if it's super speedway or not. Like, you can't give odds like that.
I think the root of the reason is the books got burned last year on this race so badly because of what happened. I mean, we had the $1 million parlay, we had some different things happening. So I think maybe that's what they're doing here, but just be vigilant out there, guys. Like, really shop around this week. Like, we can't recommend a lot of minus money bets this week. I honestly, on my card, I don't think I have any minus money bets just because it doesn't make a lot of sense at a track like this, at least for the most part. Some prop bets may.
I have one.
Okay. So we got one from Brian. And I will say, man, fucking Bet Rivers. Like, shout out to you guys. Like, I've been calling for someone to step up here. And I'm glad it's from Bet Rivers. They got a beautiful casino right down Pittsburgh. Great place. If you're ever in town, Brian, have a couple drinks there. catch a Steelers, catch a Pirates game, Penguins game, like you name it, man. Bet Rivers is the place. So I think you'll have a good time over there. So let's get in the outrights. Who do you like? Is there a number that stuck out to you this week after just hitting pretty big on Byron last week for you, man?
So normally at super speedways, like I avoid the top of the board. I just can't. I can't bet guys that are in
Mhm.
that 12 to 14 range because there's so much uncertainty coming into this week. So when the board first dropped, like the first guy that I found that I actually liked was Bubba, who was around that 18 to 20 mark. And right now he's 20 to 1 at BetMGM. I actually like that number because he is somebody that runs up front for the majority of the day at super speedways. It's just whether or not he can find the victory, which is always hard at these tracks. But as at a track that's so uncertain, I would much rather throw a smaller unit play on a larger outright than go with a placement on somebody like him who does have that wreckers or checkers type attitude.
Okay. All right. And Alfred throwing this example into Denny Hamlin minus 250
That's
at
ridiculous.
plus 105 over at Bet Rivers. Yeah. Good pointing that out, Alfred. That is what I'm saying. Like the odds were very drastic from book to book, even a
Yeah.
lot of the ones that we're using weekly, the Barstools, the Caesars of the world. I have one of the longer shots that I'll throw out. I do usually take one towards the top of the board, and then maybe one longer shot here. And in the name of it, let's go back to that number 43 card. It's Eric Jones for me this week. 33 to 1 right now on Bet Rivers. He was going off 35, 40 to 1 earlier this week. And we've already said it, like this guy's had this track circled since Michigan. He knows this is his chance in the playoffs. And I'm just going to go by finishes at super speedways and large tracks this season. Daytona, 37, but he crashed out of that one, but he was one of the fastest cars in that race. And then 8th at Atlanta 1, 6th at Talladega, 11th at Atlanta 2, 9th at Pocono, 10th at Michigan. All the 2+ mile tracks he's been awesome at so far this season. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bet on that at 33 to 1. You can also find him for a top 10 right now. Plus 130 is what you're getting over on Bet Rivers. Caesars, you can find about that number as well. I got down on it at plus 175 when I was finally able to get into Bet Rivers. But that number is being bet down. So I think it's definitely a good one to invest in. Brian, anything else for you in the outright market that you're interested in?
Yeah, I got a couple more. Like you saw it in the DFS tiers, but the next guy, Austin Cindric, 25 to 1. I think this is the sweet spot range this week. It's like that 25 to 35 range, right? You know, Eric Jones falls right in there. I think the winner probably comes from this spot because there's so many guys that are in that win or go home mode. You know, I spoke about Cindric's success or just how good he is at these tracks, regardless of finishing positions. He's been good at both Atlanta races this year. He's been up front. He's led laps in those. He was really good at the 500. He's pretty good at Talladega. I expect him to qualify well, stay up front, have elite pushers in Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano behind him, pushing him to a win. And then the other guy, Austin Dillon. I mean, it's 30 to 1. Like it looked incredible at the Daytona 500. If he can avoid the chaos again, and now the guy who won this race last year to get into the playoffs, who had Tyler Reddick helping him out to do that, who is not as good as his new teammate at Super Speedways, Kyle Busch. I expect him to get a little boost this Saturday night from that guy and just being in that win or go home mode that he's in. And so getting 30 to 1 number, you got to bet, you know, quarter unit, you could throw down $10 on this and you're walking away with 3 Benjamins.
Yeah, Austin Dillon is someone I've been trying to get invested with this weekend, and I just haven't found what that is yet. But he's always someone. I mean, we saw it last season, dude. He knows how to work Daytona. We've seen it in the 500 a couple years ago as well. I'm going to take us to the top of the board. Someone who I'm down on 13 to 1. I can find it 12 to 1 is the best I can right now, but it's Brad Keselowski. I love RFK this weekend, man. And I know a lot of times the first race of the season does not always translate to the second race of the season at a certain track. However, these guys have been lights out lately, man. And when you look at what Brad was able to do here earlier this season, led 20% of the laps, the most in the field at Daytona. And that's carried over to the Atlantas. I mean, he's been excellent at both of those tracks as well. Average finish across Atlanta 1 and 2 and Dega, 4.3. So I don't think that was just speed at Daytona. He's figuring it out, man. And like, he doesn't need to win this race. Like, he is pretty much locked in at this point, but what a story it would be. What a story it would
Not
be.
just yeah, and not just that though too. Like you can't expect a guy of his stature or his, NASCAR history to want to just go into the playoffs at that spot. Like he's in line to get eliminated after the first round of the playoffs. So a win here would push him possibly into that next group and
Yes.
closer to the cutoff line. So obviously he's not in that, oh, whatever, I'll just ride fifth and just get into the playoffs on points. Like he's still going to push for a win.
And while Buescher has been aggressive at times, even when him and Brad have been battling, like, I think at some point you have to kind of default to try to help Brad get a win and like just break that seal. So I think it could be
Yeah.
this weekend. I've been on the outright a few times with Brad this season. Has not paid off. I'm going back in, hoping we cash in on Saturday night. All right, Brian, let's head to the placement props. What was sticking out here again? I know we had to shop around to some different books. You're calling your guy off at your offshore. Like we had to get sketchy this week. Where are you heading?
So the first one, I'm going to stick with the Austin Cindric love. Cindric top 5 at the aforementioned Bet Rivers is plus 425 right now. I just think that he is in line to have what he did, a race like he did at the 500 last year, where he runs up front most of the day. He has help from his Penske teammates. And even if he is battling another Ford, say for a spot, like if he's the leading Ford car, they're probably going to try to push him to a victory over a Chevy, over a Toyota, because there is that still manufacturer divide amongst the cars. So, I love that number. You're getting decent value on that. And you kind of want to do that. You want to correlate your bets. Like if I like guy on an outright, I'm going to go with a little bit of placement, and it offers a little bit of safeness without going to the top 3, which I think it's like 7-1. So you get better value, but I see the possibility of falling out of the lead to say 4th much more likely than 1st to 6th. So give me those extra 2 spots. I'll forfeit a little bit of value and grab that. And then the other 2 are top 10s real quick. Dinger at plus 210. And then I'm probably jacking this from you. You mentioned it. BJ McLeod.
BJ
Bet
fucking
Rivers,
McLeod. BJ fucking
8-1.
McLeod.
You rattle off why this is a fantastic bet.
All right. So first of all, I want to shout out BJ McLeod's team, man. When we were at Pocono, I had a chance to meet their videographer, super cool guy.
Oh, cool.
And when we were down on the grid, we were just talking to someone who I assumed was his PR guy, chatting back and forth. And he's like, yeah, if you ever want me or BJ to come on the show, like, come on. Here was fucking Matt Tiff, just like treating my co-host and I like we were like this team wants to play, man. Like, I really think
awesome.
This team is like, they're trying, dude. Like, you have to love the sport to run, to be the, one of the worst chartered teams in the Cup Series. You have to love it, man. BJ loves it. As you kind of mentioned earlier on the show, back-to-back top 10s in this Daytona night race. 20th at Atlanta this season on the second try, 18th at Dega. They know like this is their one race. Like they really know this is their one chance if they want to go after it. And I thought the one thing that was also intriguing here when attacking the top 10 here, Brian, just one DNF in 8 races here for BJ McLeod. And
hallelujah.
It was like you said, man, when you have a guy who's running, like he misses a lot of the shit because he can brake and you know what I mean? Like he's going 60 miles per hour by the time he rolls up past the big one. So
I was just going to say, he's that guy in iRacing who's literally riding in the back of the pack just to save his safety rating, basically. And then he benefits from everybody else just getting crazy and wild and wrecking.
Yeah. So plus 800, that's actually on a couple of them. Barstool, I found that one. Also nice. Bet Rivers as well. But consider getting invested in BJ, guys. I know it sounds trivial. I know it sounds crazy, but BJ McLeod, baby. BJ also, I think he's like 900-1. I wouldn't take that, but like I was kind of just curious to see how, I wouldn't do that.
I saw him 1,000-1 somewhere, and I thought about it.
Hey, man, a penny never hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think something that's really important for people to remember too, like obviously when you're betting, you want to be responsible with your money, with your bankroll, all that type of stuff. But sometimes you also want to have fun. Like I thoroughly enjoy rooting for BJ McLeod. And
I
when you
do as
get
well.
such a long number like this, hell yeah, I'm gonna bet on it. Like it makes it double fun if you hit it.
100% with you, man. 100% with you. One other one I am interested in the position props. A guy we haven't talked too much about tonight, but it's Martin Truex Jr. plus 145 on Bet Rivers. I thought was a generous number. Next gen at Daytona, Martin Truex Jr. 6 for 6 placing in stages, fourth best average running position, fifth best driver rating, sixth best average finish. So Truex has been pretty good. All his advanced metrics check out for Daytona, top 10 in a lot of things like mid-race position, average position, laps led. I'm in, man. I'm in on Martin Truex. I don't think he'll win this race, but I think I expect him somewhere between 8 and 10. And I'm willing to bet that at this price tag. So that's it for placement props here, Brian. Where do you want to go? How are you attacking matchups? Let's start there. Do you like matchups on super speedways? Because it's a hot topic every single time.
Yeah.
Groups, same thing.
I'm so torn on matchups at Daytona and Talladega. I look, you get better odds on matchups that you would not normally even consider wagering on. But that said, like there is so much uncertainty and there's so many variables that could affect a matchup that it's so hard. You can't even a guy who's really good at a super speedway versus a guy who absolutely sucks, that could be ruined within the first 30 laps of the race if somebody gets caught up in a wreck. So like most of the time I don't go to these. I do like it when you get plus money on matchups here. Like I saw LaJoy was plus money over Eric Jones. I considered adding that. I can't even do that. I do like there's actually two that I like. I like Bubba Wallace over Tyler Reddick.
I'm cool with
Mainly
that.
yeah,
Yes, I'm cool with that.
a lot of the reasons that we talked about in DFS tiers, but also for the fact that Tyler Reddick is going to probably surrender a spot to Bubba if it means that Bubba is going to get in. So, I mean, Reddick is going to be doing the pushing of Bubba most of the day if it comes down to it. So I think just naturally they want them to finish in that order. And then the other one was Ryan Preece over Todd Gilliland, just because of Preece's, way long back history at Daytona, I think speaks volumes for what type of racer he can be here in decent equipment versus Gilliland, he's been good. It's just he has terrible luck in all three of his Cup Series races. He's wrecked out. So, other than that, like there's not a lot on the board that I'm really hankering to get down on.
I think the way I like to approach betting matchups on super speedways is fading someone and taking those types of matchups against that person. Looking at it here, we talked about him earlier, man. He got a little squirrely. It's Harrison Burton going up against Michael McDowell. And McDowell had some bad luck earlier in this season at the 500, but man, we already talked about McDowell's a really, really good super speedway driver.
Yeah.
And comparing all the advanced metrics to Harrison Burton, percent of laps led or percent of laps in the top 15, McDowell well over him. Average position, McDowell well over him. Mid-race, McDowell was fourth. Burton was 626. Driver rating, 80.4 to 51.6. Like Harrison Burton's best finish here is 19th. McDowell has a 25% top 10 rating here. Like there's a chance McDowell's has a top 10 by the end of this, and if not a top 15, if he doesn't, again, he could get taken out, but he is a much better driver at these tracks than Harrison Burton at this point in their career. So I'm with you there. The only other one, I don't need to go into too much detail of it. We can kind of wrap it up here, but Chris Buescher over Kyle Busch. I'm really high on Buescher this week, man. One of four drivers to finish in the top 15 at Dega and Daytona. Only one to go 2 for 2 for a top 5 at both of these super speedways that we've been to, Dega and Daytona, the true super speedways. Also number 1 in driver rating at Daytona. So it's not that I hate Kyle Busch, because as we said, he can crop up, man. He's that sneaky son of a bitch. You get in the car, you start it. Oh, Kyle Busch is in the back somehow. Don't know how you got there, Kyle Busch, but that's so. I'm gonna go with Buescher. I'm gonna go some more RFK love. Let's roll into specials and close this out. What do you like over there, Brian?
So the first one, look, if his race goes up in flames, like I am going to be sad, not extremely sad because these are all small unit plays, but Austin Cindric top Ford again at Bet Rivers 10-1. I'm on the Austin Cindric train this week for the first time probably in
God bless you.
20 races.
He
I already
appreciates that.
spoke about all that, and then my next one, I talked about it when we talked about trends at this track. Yes, for an overtime finish at -110 is over at Caesars. I am going to smash that. Look, I know that this is a risky play, but knowing what's on the line here for so many guys, I I think we get multiple restarts, just like we saw at the 500. I think this is going like 6-7 laps over the 160 mark. So yeah, I'm going to hit this pretty heavily.
And that trend you said was what? 3 out of the last 5, 4 of the last
No, so
6.
it's 5 of the last 7 Daytona races overall, and 2 of the last 3 fall races have all gone past the scheduled number of laps.
It's always hard. We talked about it's always hard to bet minus money, but this is one
Yeah.
that I am considering adding to my card as well. So I appreciate you shouting that out. I think that was over on Caesars. Am I correct about that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Last one I want to throw out. Phil, Full Tank with Phil put it on me when I was on his podcast earlier this week. Plus 140 at Caesars for Ford to win this, man. Ford, they've won 3 out of the last 4 races in general. Could have been 4 if McDowell didn't fucking blow up last week. Listen, with this bet, guys, like you're getting RFK. I'm high on them. Brian's high on the entire
Penske garage.
clan over there at Penske.
Yep.
Logano, Blaney, and Cindric. You're getting McDowell. I mean, I guess you're getting Todd Gillen too, but you're getting front row there. And then like SHR aren't really worth the shit, really. Like Briscoe, Almirola, like they have a shot as good as anyone.
I will say Denny Hamlin did call out Briscoe as a guy who he thinks could win this race.
Okay.
Because of everything that is probably going to happen. On his show, Action to Detrimental, Hamlin specifically said he sees a guy like Chase Briscoe winning.
Interesting. Yeah, honestly, like Briscoe's kind of been talking to me a little bit lately, except I hyped him up just a little bit. I think we put him in the D tier last week and it fucked me over.
No.
So yeah, so I'm a little, I actually put him in some DFS lines for the first time, like almost all season last week, and it fucked me over. But yeah, like Ford, I think is just the bet here. I really do. Like, I know the Toyota number is getting big, but at that point, like you're really hoping, man, for 5 or 6 drivers, and it's just so hard to do.
Yeah.
With so much variables out here. And like, in my opinion, Chevy just doesn't have the speed on super speedways either. Like, I think Chevy would have to get really, really lucky to win this race. Like, looking back at our tiers, Brian, like the first Chevy we even had was William Byron midway through the B's, and that was just out of respect.
Yeah. It is interesting to see that, especially because I think it'll be fun to watch how the Chevys team up or don't team up, because you have Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman from the Hendrick Garage looking for a win to get into the playoffs. You got Austin Dillon from RCR, also in a Chevy, looking to get into the playoffs. So, they're like a house divided this weekend. Add in the fact that Daniel Suarez is looking for a spot. So I feel like they're almost going to be infighting a lot more than, say, the Fords are, where the Fords kind of know, like, they know who their contenders are. And I would say it's like maybe if they get Almirola in, or Austin Cindric would be the primary guy with the Penske Garage. Like if he's up front, all the Fords are going to band together to push him to a win, whereas Chevy is going to be helping all the other guys at the same time, kind of mitigating the potential for one of their guys even winning.
It's feast or famine over there for Chevy. So I 100% agree with you there. Brian, thank you so much for joining us tonight, man. Can you tell us one more time where we can best support you and also the Angle of Pursuit podcast and everything you guys are doing over there?
Yeah. No, you just said it. You can go give us a follow at Angle of Pursuit podcast on Twitter. It's at FPAOP. And then over on YouTube, it's just Angle of Pursuit. Search it up. You'll see the Angle of Pursuit little NASCAR logo. Give us a subscribe or follow, whatever the heck it is. My old ass forgets these terms. And then I do write content for my company BetSperts. It's posted over at bleachernation.com. It's been a little hiatus from the NASCAR stuff with football season kind of rolling up, but I refired it up this week for Daytona, and I'll have stuff all the way through the playoffs as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, you heard him. Open up a new tab here on YouTube. Make sure you're following along with him and Kyle over there. It's great content. And make sure you're following everything else Brian's doing, dude. Fantasy football, NASCAR. You know how we are here at IVT. We love a little bit everything in the in-between. Guys, enjoy Daytona. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to support us, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, come back, hang out with us again. I think Rod will be back next week, so we'll get a little more. We'll get some juice in here. But Brian, you did a great job. Thanks so much for your time tonight, man. We will see you next time down the back road.